Good afternoon and welcome to my channel Aunty Avon. I'm Karen and this is my Finding 50 series. Today is episode 3, part 5, I think. I've lost track now. So today I'm going to continue on from last week. In last week's episode, Mark was born and Matthew was introduced to his little baby brother. So life had been pretty good so far. We had put some money away, so we had saved quite a bit of money and we were looking forward to the future. In those few weeks, like, Pete's job was really good. He was obviously earning a lot more money than he ever had done. There was a certain amount of responsibility that came with that though, and I think that side of things was stressing him out, but the money kind of compensated for it, and I think we just carried on with our lives and everything was pretty good. Because he worked for a company that made car seats for babies, that was good because we got one, I think either heavily discounted or free, I can't remember now, so that was brilliant. And you know, everything just seemed to be working out really well. So Pete was quite happy at this time and things in the house seemed to be all right. You know, we just had a second baby, we were maintaining everything, and we decided to book like a little holiday in October. It was just one of the sun holidays again, but we thought, yeah, we love them so much, we'll go. So we booked at Butlins in Bognor, and so we had something nice to look forward to. It was only a few days away, but still better than nothing. We were sort of going along quite nicely, and he seemed really upbeat. You know, he seemed very, very happy, almost like a spring in his step. So that was great. You know, I was so happy that he was actually happy because it just made the house happy. He did seem a bit distracted, and he was working, you know, sort of late-ish. And then he was going out like with the guys from work, you know, a few pubs and stuff, but he wasn't drinking because he was driving home. So not bad. And then I sort of noticed things started to take a bit of a turn, and he was getting more and more stressed, and he couldn't deal with stuff. He was getting a bit narky with, you know, with me and with the kids. You know, any noise they made, it just seemed to rile him and irritate him beyond belief. So I think things at work were starting to get to him quite a bit. And then late August, possibly early September, he lost his job. Now, he lost his job quite a few times during our marriage, so I can't remember whether this one he was made redundant or whether they kind of got rid of him through redundancy because they just weren't getting on. I can't remember which one it was now. That's quite bad, isn't it? So at the time we weren't that worried, and to be honest, I think it was kind of a relief because he was going to be at home. Not that he was that helpful, to be honest, but I think the fact that he didn't have to have that stress anymore. So we kind of re-evaluated things. We had money saved in the bank, so we were all right. You know, we were okay. We still thought we'll still go on holiday. So he hadn't had a job sort of before we went away, but we went away anyway. Pete was still Pete, you know, a bit lazy. I drove there, I drove back. It was a bit stressful because he was a shitty passenger, and because of his picking, I was stressed. So the journey there and the journey back wasn't so good, but the actual holiday was really, really great, and it was probably the nicest one that we ever had, ever. So it wasn't too bad at that point. But when we came back from the holiday, it was the following weeks really that started to get worse. He was then trying to look for a job. the longer it went on without him finding a job, the worse he was feeling. So I said, well, you know, we've got money, so why don't, you know, I look for something? He wasn't happy about that at all, because he was like, well, you'll have to take the kids to your mum's and blah blah blah. So at that point, my best friend from school, Liz, she messaged me and said there was a job going at the chiropractic clinic where she worked, like receptionist. And she said, you know, it's really full on, but it's great fun, and we'll be working kind of together, but we'll be doing like 2 different shifts. So against his wishes, really, and his wants, I decided to go for it. I didn't really have to go for an interview. It was kind of recommendation, so I didn't want to let Liz down, and I absolutely loved it because it was a now chance for me to get some nice clothes again and be professional. I think it was a bit of a lifeline for me right at that point. But then I was torn because I knew he wasn't a good person to be around the kids, especially Matt, who, you know, was kind of 3.5 now. Mark was only still a baby, so he probably wouldn't be affected too much, but Matt definitely would pick up on some of it. So I did feel really torn because I felt so guilty, like leaving them with him. But at the same time, I actually relished going to work because it meant I could get away from it and I could escape him for a few hours. Or so I thought. He was drinking a bit more, like in the evenings. And he was really, it was like he resented me, like he couldn't go out and drink, so he drank at home. But I think with drinking at home it becomes excessive, so there were quite a few days where I had to take the kids to my mum's and said I can't have him looking after them because he's been drinking all night. So there was all that level of stress, but I just kept going. You know, the kids will go to mum's now and again, but I said, you know, mum is working, you need to have them, you know, you are their dad, I'm going out to work to bring in some money and help us out. So I continued working. I really loved it. It was great to work with my best friend again, so good. And on the lead up to Christmas, we were really excited, like getting the clinic decorated, and we were just really having a great time together. It was such good fun, and we had the radio on in the background. It was a really good time, I think, there. But obviously I'd have to come home every day to hear him moan. He didn't want to cook dinner, he didn't want to do this, didn't want to do that. But my shifts were kind of weird. It wasn't like a 9-to-5 job. Sometimes I'd be in the morning, but mostly the afternoons because Liz worked the morning. So I did sort of like 2, I think, till 8 o'clock. And then every Thursday was my late lock up. So the chiropractors would go home sort of about 7, and then I would have to be there till 8 o'clock. So I then, you know, finished up, like clearing everything up. We had to wash all the gowns, we had to prepare all the notes for all the patients for the next day for Liz because she was coming in for her shift. And then I'd have to clean all the clinic, tidy it all up and prepare all the 2 clinic rooms. So that kind of took about an hour by the time I cashed up as well. But he used to phone me. He'd be like, well, you should have finished at 7. And I said, well, no, my contracted hours are until 8 o'clock. And that's when I can leave. But I said, I after the clinic finishes, I've still got to do all this, that and the other. He never seemed to understand, and it started to become a bit of a problem. So we started to have quite, you know, a lot of worries now because the money, you know, although we had saved quite a bit, we were now having to pay, you know, the mortgage and other, you know, bills, shopping, etc. And although I was earning money as well, you know, it doesn't always go very far, does it? and the money was being eaten away like on a daily basis really. Pete started to become quite depressed, I think, at this point, and his drinking was becoming more so. He couldn't find a job, and then I think it reached boiling point where when he couldn't get a job even at Tesco because they said he was overqualified, and I think that tipped him over the edge and he started to get worse. He was spending all day on his laptop and his computer, and he was just focused elsewhere. You know, he was on his phone, he was just not really there. Very distracted, I would say. So I just carried on about my business. I think he was claiming job seekers at this point, but you know, things are a bit blurred now. It's a long time ago. So I kind of felt like I had a 3-year-old or 3.5-year-old. I had a 5-month-old, and now I had a 34-year-old child as well to deal with, who drinks and is controlling and miserable and just so draining. It wasn't a very good time. So his drinking started, you know, to get a real problem now, and we were having arguments over it. So arguments over the drinking, arguments over him not having a job, and arguments over just, you know, the kids, and then me working as well. And I was like, I'm trying to do everything I can to help. That's what we do. You're taking over the childcare at the minute, I'm working. But he wasn't happy that I was there, so he kind of made my life quite difficult when I was at home. However, and then one night he said, I'm going down the pub. We had an argument about that because obviously we were struggling for money, but in the same breath I was like, actually, good, just get out. I can't be asked with you here anymore. Get out of my sight. So he went off down the pub. He drove, and he still wasn't back about 11. I put the kids to bed and I went to sleep. I didn't put the kids to bed at 11, they'd gone to bed quite a lot earlier than that. I went to bed at 11. So I remember being woken up, I don't know what time it was, maybe just after 12 perhaps. He was stood over the bed, drunk as a skunk, and he was like trying to wake me up, and I sort of jumped. Obviously you would do, wouldn't you, seeing somebody stood over you like that. And he went, Karen, I've crashed the car. And I was in a daze because I was still asleep really, but I remember sitting up bolt upright, and I went, what do you mean you've crashed the car? And he said, I've crashed the car, my car, the Carlton that I had. So I was like, well, what do you mean you've crashed it? I don't understand. And he's like, I've crashed the car. I drove home. I was like, you drove home in that state? Where is it? Where's the car? And he's like, I don't know where it is. But I was thinking, okay, he only went to the pub up the road, so there's only so much he could have left the car. So stupidly, he collapsed on the bed, like in a starfish fashion. And I got up, put my coat on, and I drove like his car. Why he took mine, I've got no idea at the time, but never mind. So I drove. I didn't have to drive very far, and I saw it. It was crunched into a lamppost, like the front radiator bit was crashed right up against it, but it didn't look damaged. So I thought maybe I can get it home at least, and we can sort out in the morning. So I got in it, and I went to sort of drive it. Then I suddenly realised that I could be taking it away from like the scene of a crime. And then I thought, and I've left my babies with a drunk man in the house. What if Matt gets up? Oh my God. and I started to panic. So I got back in his car and I drove back home, leaving the car there. And I got back home and literally I took my coat off. I went upstairs. He was just zonked out, like I said, in a star shape. So I was like trying to push him so that I could get into bed. I wanted to push him off the bed, actually. I remember thinking if I could just roll him enough, I might just throw him on the floor. But I didn't even have time to do that because suddenly there was a knock at the door and I was like, what the hell? This is like now about 12:30, 1:45 maybe. So I go downstairs like really sheepishly. And I'm like, hello, through the glass bit. And it was the police. And I thought, oh my God, they're coming to arrest me because I tried to remove the car. Not even thinking it wasn't for me. And then I was like, they know that I left my children here with a drunk man, so there was nobody responsible, and I'm going to get arrested now and the kids are going to get taken away. I just suddenly thought of all this. So I opened the door and they said, does your husband or partner live here? And I was like, yes. And they said that a man had reported him like driving and then crashing the car, and then he'd followed him home and then reported him after that. But calmly as anything, I just remember, because I think I was at my wit's end by this point, and I looked at the cop and I went, oh, he's upstairs in the front bedroom, like drunk on the bed. I said, don't wake my children up there in the next room. And they went, okay. And they said, I remember the cop was saying, because they went and got him, dragged him out of bed, took him, and they said, oh, he'll be at this police station if you're interested. And I went, no, not really. I went, I don't care what you do with him, to be honest. I said, just be nice not to have him in the house. And he said to me, I can see you look like you've had enough. And I went, yeah, I have. And then I shut the door, locked it, and went to bed. And I think I had the best night's sleep I've had in ages. But I do remember calling his mum, telling her. I shouldn't have done really, but I didn't really know what else to do. I was kind of, like I said, at my wit's end. And I think I just was trying to reach out for a bit of support. I picked him up the next day. He had been cautioned and he was to appear in court in January. This incident happened on the 22nd of December 2001. So as you can imagine, I've got a 6-month-old baby, a 3.5-year-old, and now he has been arrested and cautioned for, I can't remember what it was, driving whilst drunk. So I was like, great, this is great. A week before Christmas, not even a week, a few days, we had planned to go to my parents for Christmas Day. So I was quite glad because actually it was a really nice day. And then New Year, the court appearance came. He didn't want me to go with him, so he got a taxi. So he got a taxi there, and then when he came back, he said he has been banned for 18 months. And I thought, great. So not only have you got no job, you've now got no driving licence. So if you do get a job, you're not going to be able to get to some of these places. And I just felt really hopeless, I think, at that point. He had to go to some job workshops and things like that. And I think, I don't know whether it was like a rehabilitation thing. I can't remember now. But I remember having to drive him there. Again, the drives there were stressful. Picking him up was stressful. He was irritated and just took it all out on me. And I think by this point I was just so weak and destroyed, maybe, that I didn't fight back. I didn't question. I didn't say anything. I just let him do it. And that is my fault. But I think by then I just didn't have the strength or the willpower to do anything about it. I just let him carry on. They say easy wife, easy life, easy wife, isn't it? Something like that. Easy life. They say happy, they do say happy wife, happy life. So I guess that was kind of what I was doing in reverse. So I continued to work at the chiropractic clinic, which I absolutely loved. The clients were brilliant, you know, taking the money and everything. I just felt really, really good about myself when I was there. A little bit of escapism for me was just what I needed. Sometimes, like during my shift, he would call me, not just once or twice, but several times. And I kept saying to him, look, because he was phoning on the work phone as well, it was getting quite bad. And he was making me feel stressed because he was bringing it to my door. He kept saying, well, what should I do about this? What should I do about that? And, you know, when are you coming home? And I said, these are my hours. So these are the hours I have to work. I can't just come home. So I told Liz about it the next day, and I said, you know, he keeps calling me during my shift. I don't know what to do. So bless her heart, she told the chiropractor. So the next day she spoke to me and she said, if he calls, let me speak to him. I was like, right, okay. And I was quite kind of glad that there was somebody there that was strong, that could just help me. I think I was just needing that support. Sure enough, like clockwork, he calls, just about ready to moan, and I sort of waved to her and said, it's him. So she came over and she took the call and she told him off. And I think Liz and I were both in the clinic that day, and we were sniggering like little schoolgirls in the corner because he was being told off. Of course, that would have consequences for me, but it was great at that moment. When I got home, it was like the narcissist in him was enraged, you know, that he had been spoken down to and hadn't had the divine right to call up his wife and moan at her, even though she was at work in a professional public setting. You know, this was like in front of clients. It wasn't, or patients, it wasn't professional at all for him to do that, but, you know, he didn't really care. He started saying, who does she think she is? How dare she speak to me like that? She better hope that I don't come down there and meet her, because I'll give her a piece of my mind. And I was thinking, yeah, I'd like to see you try that actually, because she's quite feisty. She was very, I would say she was probably wired up a bit like a bloke, so she wasn't emotional like I was, and obviously she wasn't in that relationship, so she was strong and independent, got a good career, she's very intelligent. So I was like, yeah, actually I'd love to see both of you, you know, get in the ring and have a verbal onslaught, because I think she would probably slap him down massively. But that never happened, unfortunately. So at that time, Pete definitely wasn't very nice to be around. I worried about the boys all the time, again being torn between leaving them and going off and having that sort of time to be free, I suppose. He spent a lot of time on Facebook at this time, so his evenings were full of just surfing it, whatever you want to call it, and he always seemed to be sort of distracted. If it wasn't that, I think, you know, he always seemed to be typing. I didn't really think a lot of it because I thought he was doing work stuff, but he was upstairs, so I could never do anything right. I was trying to work for money to help us, but that wasn't good enough. He wanted me to be at home with the kids and be a mum and be a wife. He was quite horrible to me most of the day, and then come bedtime, he was all over me, wanting this, that and the other. And I actually looked forward to him getting drunk so that he would just fall asleep and I wouldn't have to do anything. So I kind of got out of it, out of my wifely duties, if you like. Because why would you want to do that with a bloke that's picked at you all day and moaned at you, and, you know, for trying to do the right thing and looking after everything? and then he wants you to entertain him. No, bog off. So during the week when I wasn't working, I would drop Matt off at nursery, and then I would be with Mark and I'd take him around the shops, and I'd stay out pretty much most of that time until it was time to go and pick him up. And then I'd come home, drop them back off with him, and I would then go to work. So at least I wasn't spending so much time with him. But that wasn't good enough either, because, you know, he'd moan about that. Yeah, I don't think you can ever win with a narcissist. They are the winners, and that's that. If you don't like it, it's tough. There's not much you can do about it. So on one Thursday, I was doing my late shift, and the phones had been really busy, and I had clients in and out, and it was kind of getting to the end, but there was like a few clients still in the surgery. And then the door opened, so I thought, oh, another client's coming in, and he turned up. Now, where we live was probably a good 20-minute bus drive away, and of course he didn't have a car at this point because he'd been banned from driving. So he walks in, and my heart drops, and I'm like, what's happened? You know, are you okay? And he's like, oh, I've just had enough, and I just wanted to sort of bring them out. And I was like, oh, did you get a cab then or something? He went, no, we came on the bus. The kids loved it, or Matt loved it. He was like, oh, you should try getting the bus sometime, and people aren't very nice, they don't help you on with stuff, and blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm working. And the chiropractor came out, and she was just about to have a go, but because there was only one more client left, she took that client in, and then she said it's okay, he can stay for today because it's your late shift anyway and you've nearly finished, but you know, make sure you still do your job, sort of thing. I felt mortified and really embarrassed, because I just thought, God, you know, what must these people think of me? Here am I trying to give a professional appearance to this professional establishment, and now I just look like an idiot, like with a dictative husband who can't manage his own children. I mean, it was like he thought I was cheating on him or something. You know, I was there working, but yeah, just the resentment that I felt, and he kind of controlled that situation, because obviously he turning up at my work put me in quite an awkward situation. I never would have done that to him unless it was absolutely necessary. The next day, the chiropractor spoke to me, and she said, you can't ever let this happen again. She said, you know, he needs to be told he can't just turn up here. You know, we've got clients, it doesn't look very professional. I just felt so embarrassed. I just wanted the ground to swallow me up. And I was telling Liz, and she was like really upset as well. And she's like, why does he keep doing it? She said, it's terrible. She goes, why doesn't he just leave you alone and let you get on with things? I was like, because he's unable to relinquish that control. He wants that. It's just, yeah, it's so hard. It's such a hard relationship to be in with a narcissist who just controls everything, every aspect of your life. And if you don't comply, they just make you pay for it in so many different ways. The emotional bullying, if you like, and effects of it are quite devastating, really. So one shift, probably the following week, I think, he called me with devastating news. If I continued to work, his benefits would be stopped. So he said, there's no point in you working anymore, so you need to hand your notice in. I was gutted. I absolutely loved that little job. It was so good for me. Liz was gutted as well. She's like, oh, I can't believe it. She's like, oh, can't you just manage on your money and, you know, sod the benefits and all this lot? But he wasn't having any of it. He didn't want me working there in the first place, so for him it was like a narcissistic dream that he had suddenly relinquished control and he was back in the driving seat, so to speak. So just as I thought it would never improve, he got a job, finally. So it was like a light at the end of the tunnel for us all, and things were okay and getting back to normal. But he was very stressed again, and coupled with the fact that he was banned from driving, he was struggling to get there. He was constantly asking me to take him, but I said I can't. I've got to take Matt to, you know, playgroup, nursery. I've got a baby, and it's almost impossible trying to get all that sorted, get you there, and then come home and then take them, you know, back out as well. I said, it's not easy. So of course we argued over that, blah blah blah, and it didn't matter what I said, what I did, I was always wrong. I continued to shut most of it out. You know, he was out most of the day anyway, so it was kind of a relief. And things, you know, were okay whilst he wasn't there. But when he came home, he was like an utter shit to me, is all I can say. He was so horrible, like his comments were spiteful. You know, oh, lucky you being at home all day, what have you done? Blah, 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 blah. Oh yeah, nothing, I've not done anything. So, yeah, it was just spite, I think spiteful. Then other days, he would be all excitable and a bit frisky and sort of touching me up, like inappropriately. And I was like, oh, just stop doing that in front of the kids. You know, when I was just trying to do dinner or something like that, there was always, it's like he just wanted attention constantly. Yeah, maybe I was like catnip or something to him, I don't know. Then he was moody again, so I never actually knew which version of him was going to come home that night, which makes you feel very on edge and doesn't give for a good relationship at all. We kind of coexisted, and then he lost his job. Again, I can't remember whether it's because of his attitude towards his boss and the way he behaved to people that he worked with. And I can't remember the time scale either, like how long he was there. I know it wasn't long. And right at that point, I just thought the world was ending, really. The atmosphere in the house was horrible. I was always on edge, making sure the kids weren't noisy because I was frightened they were going to upset him and it was just going to blow up. And I remember at this point just thinking, I could just leave. If I left, things would probably be so much better for me anyway. And I think he made me cry so much. And then he said to me, like he almost preempted my thoughts. He said, if you ever leave me, he said, I will make it very difficult for you. And he said, just remember, he said, a woman and 2 young kids, he said, who's going to take that on, especially at your age? He's like, you'll end up in a horrible old flat with wallpaper dripping off the walls because it's damp. And that's never left me, that comment. And I was not really my true self back then. So hearing something like that, it doesn't make you feel very good or very confident. And I didn't feel very confident about myself. And he was right, 2 kids, you know. I didn't have a job at that time either. So I was pretty much stuck. Whenever we went out, I had to drive, and he continually picked. It was making my panic attacks quite bad. And then he got another job. So things again started to get better. He was out of the house, less stressed. I don't think I was ever more grateful than at that point that he actually got another job. I still dreaded him coming home. But I think at this point he was getting his license back as well. So that made it easier for him. I was so grateful to still have my baby group Fridays. And obviously at this point now, most of us have got a second child and we are at each other's houses every week now, which is great. And we all took it in turns, so there were 6 of us. So, you know, once every 6 weeks you would like host it and buy the cakes for the kids and biscuits for the mums and tea. So, you know, we had that, and thank God we had that, because it was like a real perfect time to just get it all out and feel better then. And I think things like that, and seeing my best friend as well was really helpful during that time, because I desperately needed that. I don't think I would have coped half as well as I did if I didn't have them. One Sunday was particularly bad. He was just moaning all morning, and I just thought, oh, sod this. So I took the kids out and I said, should we go to the park? So I took the buggy for Mark. He must have been about 2 at this point, I think. And, you know, so Matt was about 5. And they were like running around the park and having a really good time, and it was lovely. And I sat on the swing and I was just watching them. And then I looked around and I just remember seeing all dads with their kids, pushing them on the swings, down the slide, having real good fun with them. And there I was, like the only mum in that playground. And I started to cry, just thinking, those mums are so lucky. They don't realise how lucky they are. They're probably at home with their feet up, or maybe they're doing dinner, I don't know, but they've got that time to themselves in the house without the kids. And I've never had that, like never, not from him anyway. The only time I'd get a break is if my mum and dad had them. His mum had moved by this point, so she'd moved down to Surrey to be nearer to her daughter, so we didn't see her that much. And I remember phoning her one day and saying, oh, you know, can I bring the kids over? We'll come and spend the day with you. And her comment to me, even now I think about it, she just said on the phone, maybe when the weather is better so that they can be outside. As if to insinuate that my kids were so bad that they would just tear up her little house. And I remember saying that to Pete, and he was angry with her. And I said, oh, don't say anything, just leave it. But I remember being really disappointed, because I kind of wanted to go over there and just sort of get away from it all. And I was thinking, okay, so we have to wait for the weather to improve so we can come and see you, which still to this day makes me quite mad. Pete was quite happy at work and nasty at home. He didn't even have time for the kids. He was either on Facebook or he was just watching the TV. Football he loved to watch, and whilst he watched that, we weren't allowed to be anywhere in the room, or if we were, we had to be quiet. He didn't do anything, didn't do any housework. He just never interacted with the boys at all. And I remember saying to him, you're so lucky that you've got 2 boys. And I said, and you don't even bother with them. And he went, well, when they get older, he said, we'll probably have a bit more in common then. And I went, it'll be too late then. They won't want to know you. Why would they? If we ever had family over as well, that was even worse, because he just made everybody feel so uncomfortable. You know, like that heavy pressure you get when you walk into a room and you just know there's something evil there or something not right. That's how he made people feel. So eventually family just stopped bothering. But I was lucky that my best friend Liz and one of my other friends that I'd met at playgroup, she came over as well quite often with her son. And so I had that and the baby group girls. So if I hadn't had that, like I said, I think things would have been a lot different and a lot more difficult. One morning, like my friend and I, we'd arranged to have like a date, a play date. Her daughter was 3 months younger than Mark, so they got on so well, and it was great. So whilst they were playing, like, she came over to me and they were playing this particular morning. I'd had a really stressful week with Pete. You know, she obviously knew most about it because I was always telling her. So I was catching her up with it, filling her in over a cup of tea, and I was making some bread. I remember I just got this bread maker, so I was making some bread and we had some cheese and crisps and salad, and it was all lined up and it was so nice. And then I just remember this feeling. So whilst the kids were playing and we were talking, she could see that I was quite downtrodden from the girl that she used to know. I was like, I suppose, a different person really. I mean, she'd known me since I was 12, so, you know, we had a pretty good judge of each other. and she'd always been there, like, to listen. And then I stood up to go and, like, make another cup of tea, get the kids something, like a little snack. So all of a sudden I just let out this cry of horror as I realised that it was Mark's induction day for nursery. And with everything going on and all the stress, I'd forgotten. I was in a state, I was hysterical, yeah, crying hysterically. I was all over the place. But bless her, in her utterly calm manner that she's always had, she just said, "Give me the number." She picked up the phone and she dialed the number and she spoke to them. She explained that we'd had a bit of a bad morning and she, you know what it's like with kids and it's not really worked out. Can she rearrange the induction? And she just dealt with it. And I was so, like, proud of her, and I stood there, like, sobbing. And she put her arms around me afterwards and she said, "It's all been rebooked for tomorrow, not a problem." They understood. She said, "I know that I lied, but they don't need to know, like, the full truth." And she just put her arms around me and gave me a big cuddle. And then the next bit, I don't think I'll ever forget. She grabbed me by the shoulders and she shook me like that and she went, "Where are you?" I think that was one of those moments. It was kind of a kick up the arse, a wake up call, whatever you want to name it. It was absolutely necessary. I think it shocked me because she's not very sort of demonstrative like that. That would be something that I would have done. But it was like, you know, she was saying to me, "Where have you gone? You know, this isn't you. This is not the Karen that I know. Where are you?" That was one of those days that, you know, where a narcissist's behaviour and attitude had completely drained me and actually stopped me from remembering something very, very important for our child. And that's unforgivable. Whatever he did to me, doing that and having that effect on our children now was a bit different. I knew things had to change. I wasn't quite sure how, especially after his comment about, "If you leave me, I'm going to make things very difficult." I had no reason not to believe him. But I'm going to leave it there right now. So I hope that you've enjoyed this one, and I'm hoping that, you know, if you are watching this, you are not going through anything similar, or if you are, that you are going to seek help and support from anybody. Just tell people how you feel. Don't be ashamed of it, and it's not your fault and it's not wrong, you know, for you. I don't want to say for you to be going through it, I can't really word it properly. I know what I mean. But just ask for help from anybody. It doesn't matter who it is. Somebody that you trust, obviously. Get that help and support, because it's so important before it's too late. I think it was kind of too late for me at that point, but it had made me see things a lot clearer. Okay, right, so I will see you next Monday, and until then I hope you have a fantastic week. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you do like it, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And until then, I'm Karen. Bye.